existence and got down on his hands and knees and formed Adam out of the dust of the ground and reached into Adam's side and created Eve from a rib. The one who spoke the stars into existence and knows them by name. The one who counts the sand on the seashore. The one who knows the hairs on your head. He stepped into this realm. Can you imagine that? But more than that, he came for one purpose, and that was you. And that was me. His affection was made known to us by going to a cross and dying so that we can live. I struggle to even comprehend it. But who is it that we worship? We worship Jesus. Why? Nothing else makes sense. Right? You can try out every other world religion. Every other world religion says, do these things and God may love you. If you're a Muslim, here's your hope. If your scales, the good side of your scales outweigh the bad side, then Allah may allow you into glory. May, if He's having a good day. That's why there is no end to those who are willing to shed their own blood, because the promise for them is if they die in the name of Allah, that they may be granted entrance into heaven because they have no hope otherwise. You look at any other cult that says that they follow after Christ, at the core of each and every one of them is a works-based theology. If you do these things, if you go knock on enough doors, if you give enough to the poor, if you put on your special spiritual underpants, God may love you, but not Christianity. Christianity is that for God so loved the world that He gave His one and only Son, that whoever believes in Him shall not perish but have everlasting life. For God did not send His Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through it. I want you to think about how He did save the world through suffering. And why did He do that? He did it for you. And He did it to produce spiritual offspring. There's not one of us that deserves the privilege to be called a child of God. There's not one of us that comes from a good enough family that can be born into the family of God. There's not one of us whose parents are awesome enough or spiritual enough to will us into the kingdom of God. No, that happened by the work of Jesus Christ that was finished on a cross some 2,000 years ago. And then He says, if you come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, I will give you rest. And what a hope that is. So, who is it that we worship? Jesus. And why do we worship Him? Because it's the only one who makes sense. When I think about our mission team, when I think about who we worship, and there's a slide there. You talk about a diverse group of people. Okay? We have people who grew up in Uganda. We have people who grew up in South Africa. We got people who grew up in Powers Lake, North Dakota. People who grew up in Central Ohio. All from different backgrounds. All have different characteristics and personality traits. But all united under one banner. Jesus. And yes, we were gone for 2 weeks. And you might think, 2 weeks is nothing. Those people have so many needs. And yeah, they do. But while we were there, we met some of them. But why did we do that? Because of Jesus. Now, let's bring that back home. Why is worship so important here? Because people need Jesus. Who is it that we worship? The risen King. And I don't think you would struggle if I asked you to think right now of one person in Powers Lake who needs to know Christ. He is no less important than the 800 kids we want with from Uganda. Who is it that you worship? This one. And when you might say, well, that's easy, Jesus. I would caution you. Is that really true? somebody would examine the story of your life, would the main character of your life be Him? Because if it's not, then you don't worship Him. Most likely you worship yourself. But finally, we've seen what is worship. We've seen who do we worship. We'll answer the most profound, why is it that we worship? Look at verse 14. It says, the Word became flesh, and it dwelt among us. We have seen His glory, the glory of the only begotten Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. Saints, the worship is necessary because of Jesus' transcendence and because of our dependence. Why is it that we worship? Because of Jesus' transcendence. What's that mean? That's a big theological term that basically means this: that the God of the universe humbled Himself and became a man. Not for 33 years, but as we speak right now, there is a man sitting on the throne of God. His name is Jesus Christ. Maybe I could explain it to you this way. If somebody would come to you and say, Mary, I have this mission for you. Okay? I know you're a human being. I know you enjoy humanity and all the perks and privileges of it. But what I need you to do is become a chihuahua. And not a chihuahua for 33 days or 33 years, but become a chihuahua for the rest of eternity, for the sake of the rest of the chihuahuas in all of creation. That's a big step down. The God of the universe made that step down. He transcended time. He transcended the stars. He transcended everything for you. So why do we worship? Because of His transcendence. You know, it never ceases to amaze me that every day that we look at the calendar, we judge time by what He did. He is transcendent. He is worthy of praise, worthy of worship. But we also worship. The reason why we worship is because of our dependence upon Him. And this is where I think we miss it in the American church. We miss it because we are very comfortable. And I don't want you to feel bad about being born here. This is a blessing that you were born here. Okay? It's a blessing that if you find yourself in a great family. It's a blessing that from the hand of God, if you find yourself in a career that you love, that's a good and godly thing. But let's not forget about how dependent we are on Jesus. Colossians 1 tells us that Jesus is the one who created everything and He holds everything together, meaning that last time that my heart beat, that was because He allowed it. The fact that my lungs can expand and take in air, that was because He designed me that way and He allowed that to happen. Okay? The fact that all the molecules in my body are held together and don't just fly off into oblivion, He is responsible for that. The fact that I woke up this morning is a product of His hand. Let us not forget how dependent we are on Him. Let us not be those who, instead of chasing after the God who provided us with everything in abundance, let us not be those who worship that abundance, but be dependent on Him. And I was struck by this question as one of the points in our travel. One of the days that we were there, this was the worst day of the whole trip. And I knew it was going to be. We went and did hospital visitation. And to be honest with you, I really did not want to go because I knew what I was going to see. And I knew I was not going to like it. Hospitals in Uganda are not places that you go to get better. They are places you go hoping not to die. Okay? And there is a difference. When you walk into a hospital in Uganda, the floor is filthy. Beds are soiled. There are animals running around the hospital. There are not enough nurses and there are not enough medication. Doctors are limited in what they know and what they can do. And we go into this hospital. go into this hospital to pray for people. And there were two different occasions in which I want to share with you. One, they paraded the Americans into this room. It was roughly the size of our library, filled with people infected with HIV and AIDS, sitting in chairs, all staring forward, looking at us. And their questions repeatedly to us were, could you please give us a cure? We don't have that. I don't have that. And you're left feeling hopeless because they look to you for the answer. You don't have it. And then another occasion, I was walking down the hallway, and there's this one room where this guy was isolated by himself. Myself and Sam, one of our tour guides, walked into this room, and the man was laying in a bed, and there was a sheet over him, and he wasn't moving. I thought, oh man, this guy's dead. The room was filled with a foul odor. And we shook the guy, and he began to move, so we were encouraged that he wasn't dead. He pulled back the sheet, and he has this huge gaping wound in his neck that is just gangrenous and just suffering. Nothing that you could do. And I thought to myself, really don't want to be here. But there's a purpose there's a reason why I am. And the reason is so that Jesus can be worshipped. So his name can be exalted even in this place. And the reason I share that with you is worship isn't just what happens within the four walls of this building. Worship is a lifestyle. Worship is gratitude. Are you grateful for what Jesus has done? Then go do the hard things. Go and pray for those who have no hope otherwise. The world has no answers for them. There is no medication that can make them better, but there is a great physician, one who sits on a throne, who created heaven and earth, who has the answer for them, either in this earthly realm, but ultimately in the spiritual realm. He is the answer. Will you go? Will you worship? The reason why we worship is because we are dependent upon Him. We don't have the answers. And He has transcended time and our sin and overcame everything. So why is it that we worship? Because Jesus Christ alone is worthy. And I'll leave you with this. There's one final thought. C.S. Lewis. Most of you guys know who C.S. Lewis is. He used to be an atheist. Came to know Christ later in his life. Became one of the greatest apologists of the Christian faith. Defenders of the Christian faith. At one time in his life, he read this Idiot's Guide to Worship, the Bible. And he made the comment that went something like this. It says, "It seems to me that the God depicted in the Old Testament is much like an old woman desperately in need of compliments or praise. That same man encountered Jesus Christ, discovered who He truly was, and was humbled and was transformed. That same man later in his life wrote these words: the worship that overflows out of our hearts is a sign of spiritual health that overflows from that heart." I wanted to share that with you because some of us in this room find it really hard to worship. We find it really hard to lift our hands. We find it really hard to lift our voice. We find it really hard to do the hard things. When God says, go and pray for this person. Go and speak the gospel to this person. Go to this place or go do this thing. We find that extremely difficult. C.S. Lewis would argue the worship that overflows from your heart is a sign of spiritual health. I want to lift up the inverse of that idea. If those things are hard for you, then maybe that's a sign that you're not healthy. Maybe that's a sign that the American church isn't healthy. And the world doesn't have the answers to restore us, but Jesus does. May we be individuals who worship because Jesus is worthy. May we be a church known for